Hello, and welcome to Storage Byte number 4. Today we're going to talk about the new SpaceFinder web user interface, a little bit of modernization that we've been cooking up in the lab to improve the SpaceFinder product, its overall usability and capability. Today's topics, I'll talk a little bit about the high-level architecture of the new web UI and compare it and contrast it to the existing Java client UI, and then we'll have a quick demo. This was great at the beginning, long before the concept of the locked down corporate workstation and having to get security deviations and the like to run this. The actual Java blobs were they're shipped in as an SMPE element with the product. You extract and download them, and then you install them on every end user's workstation who's interested in being able to use SpaceFinder. And then, of course, right, software, what is it that IBM used to say, or still says, right, software, but hardware eventually breaks and software eventually works. So there are probably a fairly aggressive stream of updates and fixes that have to go out to keep the code that's running on the workstation fresh. And another issue has been that, Java itself updates, so we have to continually look at changing the underlying product to support the newer level of Java, newer level of things like Install Shield and various sundry other things that you get into when you are living in the workstation PC Windows world. And also, right, it doesn't work on Linux and it doesn't work on Linux workstations and it doesn't work on Mac. And some companies have begun to standardize around that. So we looked at what it would take, did a really short-term prototype a while ago to make this stuff run on ZOS so that you don't have all these, outside issues of, dealing with workstation levels and getting the appropriate support from your management to make it work. And so rather than shipping a big Java blob that you put on your workstation, we'll ship you a big Java blob that you run on ZOS. And so the delivery mechanism will be the same. It'll be a SMP element or elements that get shipped with the product. It starts and runs on ZOS, and we've taken advantage of open source software like the Tomcat that's been updated for Z, called T:/Z from the Dovetail Technologies guys. And the thing itself is mostly Java, so it runs on a zip engine as opposed to eating up general purpose MIPS. And again, rather than running something on your PC, everything is accessible through the browser. So you sign on with your TSO or MVS credentials and RAC FACF2 top secret, whatever you have behind that will ensure that you are entitled to log on to this thing and use its features, and that's the security context that's carried with all of your requests. The best thing about this is that there's no end-user software required, so as long as you got a, have browser will travel. So as long as you've got a browser and the URL of where you've installed the SpaceFinder web UI, you're good to go. So I'll pause here if there are any questions or thoughts or concerns about what I've said about the web UI. I think we've answered the requirements that we got from the customers who were kind of complaining about the workstation-based one. All right, I will take silence as consent or assent. So this is a movie. It is not live because what I've learned in my umpteen years of doing this is that whenever you want to do a demo, somebody is going to be using the system and will damage it behind you. But it is real. I did get on the system the other day and just essentially screen captured my entire interaction with the SpaceFinder GUI. Web UI. If you look closely, you'll see that there are some problems, and I will talk around them, but this is, really close to being done and in the can and available for beta test with you guys. So again, this will, you use your mainframe credentials to sign on. It signs into the system. The first thing I'm going to show is that you can set up a mail server to be able to take the reports and other things that are generated by this workstation, by this web application, and send them to you or some other person's email address. And I've shown Gmail here so that if your internal network is set up to talk to the outside world, that you can do that, and ours is. Then I show here the UI really closely mirrors what's in the workstation UI. And what I'm showing here is a saved query of nearly full volumes, and I've defined that to mean any volume that's more than 80% full. And when you run it, it goes off to the mainframe and goes and grabs up a bunch of information. And you can see here that kind of our system is not really a large system, but we have a fair amount of volumes here that are nearly full. When we look later, we'll see that they're not just nearly full. Some of them are just really small. You can do things like sort by column, which is what I've just done, and now I've got the 80% at the bottom. You can also sort by address. You can sort by any columns here at all. And when you mouse over, one of the really cool things that you can do here is you can do what's called a quick filter or a column filter, and just select based on the text that's in the column, right? So now I've added 3 dog to the filter, and you can see that now only the volumes that have a 3 dog in them are displayed. And so it's kind of a nifty feature to be able to, pare down what you're looking at if your query is much larger or extends beyond what you would normally need. Another thing you can do is you can get the details on the line by clicking on it. The amount of information that's available through Space Finder is usually far wider than a single screen will display. And so rather than trying to scroll left and right and look at things, you can look at the individual rows as independent items. There's also other views of the same data, and this is really just showing a summary view of all the volumes that I've displayed there, and that of the volumes that are displayed, there's about just 6 and change percent free space available. Now I can go back and hitting the gear. I can go back and actually edit this this query and create another one, right? So I can change this to 95%, and now get down into a much smaller set of volumes potentially. You'll see here that there's a bunch of volumes that are, very close to, more than 95%, fewer than before. And now I can save this query, and by typing in a name, just for fun, I call it almost completely full volumes. And now you see that has been saved over on the right. Now, because I ran the query before I saved the query, the query header is still nearly full volumes, and that's one of the bugs we're going to have to work through here, or maybe it's just a feature. And I paused here for effect. Now there are icons to change the way this looks and be able to pull data out. The first one is a column widener or shortener, and what that does is it takes the white space out of a set of columns and compresses things so that maybe you can get more on the screen. There's an export table which will generate a comma-separated value file and allow you to save it on your PC. Select all allows you to select a set of things, and so what I'm doing here is I'm actually doing the export. And because this is a Mac, it tries to run, and it will run Microsoft Excel and the data that came out. And there you have the exported value. So it nicely integrates with the tools that you already have on your workstation. Alter the columns. Now I showed you before, right, there's a very small number of columns in this report. I can go back and add more columns, and if you want to get all the columns, you can click the available columns at the top. You can also change the order that they are displayed in by dragging and dropping the various column values and then rerunning the query. And now you can see that I've added the used field to this report. it is sorted by percentage used. And you can see that the percentage used is in gigabytes, and I've sorted it by that. Something else that's pretty cool is that you can alter the units to suit your taste. Now, if I change it to megabytes, the values all switch to megabytes or to kilobytes, and even to tracks. And if you've entered cost information, that cost value will be used to calculate it. I haven't done that, so that's not here. Now, let's say I wanted to generate this report to send it off to somebody to say, hey, these are the volumes that are almost full. We might want to do something about it. What I can do here is I'm creating text blocks that can be added as inserts into the report so that people can see, what it is that I'm doing, what each section is. You can put anything in the text block that you want. It's a rich text editor, so you can, change the color, change the size. What I'm doing is I'm changing them to be headers within the report, and then I can drag and drop them into the appropriate spot in the report. And I have an intentional error coming up here. I actually will put the volume information into a text block and then forget that I did that. I've dropped the wrong one. Whoops. But nothing stops me from making this the right one. I would suspect for some reports you might want to put, if your partner in crime is named Stan, you could say, hey Stan, take a look at, volume 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It appears to be full of stuff that it shouldn't be full of, or something like that. And, so you can update these things and annotate them any way you'd like. Right, now I'm stuck in the text blocks annotations that I like, and I can go off and preview what this report's going to look like. One of the things that's kind of neat about this is that it's still active web content, so bouncing over it will cause it to take certain actions. And now when I publish, it generates a PDF for me. And you can name it whatever you want. I rename it here because the default name is just the date. And I've got it set up to send it to my work account. And I don't want to open it, so I'm just going to save it. And now the web code running on the mainframe is interfacing with the SMTP server, which is Gmail at the moment. So it's not. It takes a little while. And I cannot explain what the graphic is. It's just what the UI designer decided to put together. So now it's been sent. I'll close this out. I'll close out the preview. And off screen is my Outlook screen. And while the cursor is missing, it's because I'm opening the email and dragging it over here. Right, so you get an email from Space Finder. It gives you the link to connect to the Space Finder instance that generated it, and here's the PDF with all the stuff that was generated in the report. So you could, if you're using your own Exchange or any other mail server at work, you can use groups and things like that, or multiple email addresses to send it to a bunch of people if you want. Just for fun, I also run a detailed report on data sets. This is, sort of the SpaceFinder moral equivalent of 3.4 in ISPF. So I'm going to take a look at all of my data sets on the system that are PDSEs. So everything that starts with SSAF, the systems, and my name is Scott Andrew Fagen, so that's my ID. And I want to look at all of my PDSEs. So if there's lots of selective criteria here, I'm not going to use most of them. But you can do things like, find VSAM data sets that are shaped a certain way, or data sets that are larger than a certain size or smaller than a certain size. There's a lot of logical comparisons that can be done on the various values. You can look, find all the data sets that are in a particular catalog and things like that. So I'm just showing a fairly prosaic query here. So all of my PDSEs. And there they are. And this is showing that, sort of SpaceFinder is a very effective cockroach at finding all the storage stuff. I mean, it's a very, very wide variety of information that it returns and you can look at and interact with. And now I can save this or change the columns. Right, so clicking on the all, we'll either give it to all, we'll either toggle them all on or all off. Let's say I want to just look at specific information. And there are all the data sets that I've, that are mine, and the information that I selected for them. Let's sort by name. Change the units again. I can save the report that I just generated. And you can see on the left that that's generated that report. And I believe that that is all. It is.
Yep, and you can change the color palette and all the other things here, all kinds of different.
Oh yeah, I should have said that. Yeah, all the everything is customizable at the user level. You could change you saw that a lot of the numbers were in colored bars. You could change the threshold values that those colors show up at and what the colors are as well. It's kind of really cool. So at this point, we're almost ready to package this up and let people use it. It will run on top of, we're sure that it'll run on top of SpaceFinder 3.2. It will most likely run with 3.1, but we probably like to focus on 3.2 customers. So if anybody is interested in taking this on and running it, it is fairly innocuous. There's a couple of new MVS pieces that are assembler code that help us interface with the security product and help us interface with some of the data that's coming out, just because there weren't Java classes that we could use to do that. So if you're running it somewhere on a test system, SpaceFinder test system, it might be a great place to drop this on top and get us feedback, certainly around the usability and the capability of the product. So if you could, if anybody's interested, please let us know. We'd be glad to work with you with this. And that's where I'll end with questions, since I think we're running a little late at this point. Thoughts, comments?
I've got a couple questions. I'm not familiar with this product. We use a product called Vantage from CA. It looks fairly similar to that.
Yep.
Is there any presentations on the Spacefinder product itself to get a feel for what capabilities it has?
Certainly there are. We can get in touch with you and give one to you if you'd like.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if you have a recorded one, that would be great. Just something to familiarize myself with what the capabilities are, just to compare and contrast. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, so I spent a long time at CA, and the products are, as you would think with most monitors, have a lot of commonality. Some of the things are done similarly, some of the things are not. I would say we compare favorably to Vantage in most ways, but we can certainly get something to you, and so you can run your own bake-off.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yep, and Chuck, I'll reach out and send that over to you. Okay.
Perfect. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? Promise I won't give you COVID-19. As far as I know, it is not transmitted through computers.
Right. All right.
All
so
right. Well,
we do. Yes. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah,
all
please
right.
reach
Have
back
a good
if you are a SpaceFunder. If you are a SpaceFunder user, we'd love to have you evaluate this.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, cool. I'll turn it back to you, Erica.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.